Day 235 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another quick update as I take that simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine today. And as always, I'll start off with those Russian military personnel losses. So this is as of the 16th of October 2022. A little bit of a milestone in the way, 65,000 losses. Now this is of course an approximate assessment as it says there. But since the previous day, an additional 300 losses on the Russian side. Then we'll take a quick look at the armoured combat vehicles, a whopping 14 additional losses on the Russian side, a pretty hefty 5 additional tank losses on the Russian side there, and 7 artillery, not too bad there as well. So we'll firstly jump back to the map there, and we'll start out in the Russian Federation, so just above the Ukrainian border, the Belgorod Oblast there, just constantly plenty of news coming out of here at the moment, where a fire at an oil depot occurred in Belgorod, and authorities blamed it on shelling from Ukraine. Or maybe smokers. Looks like they've actually stopped using that official line of somebody smoking. It got old real fast, or very unbelievable after even the first time. Also in Belgorod, there was found the remains of a S-400 missile in the Gravoronsky district of Belgorod, shown here with some photos. Now it probably needs to be pointed out here at this point that Ukraine has never deployed, had, or been an operator of the S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. However, that may not even stop the government in this region from creating an alternative narrative blaming Ukraine for this. It's happened before. But sometimes we're protected because of due to the prevalence of smartphone technology and footage, cameras, all of that these days. So not even Russia can deny their own missiles are malfunctioning, fizzling out, and falling out of the sky onto the grounds in Belgorod, causing damage to their own country fairly consistently too now. More than ever, in fact. Also, somewhere in the Belgorod region, at a training base, there was something of a shootout at that Russian training ground here for newly mobilized draftees. Now, there was some different reports on what happened, but most reports now point to internal Russian forces or soldier disputes, 11 killed, 15 wounded. It was said to be caused by 2 natives of Tajikistan. Now, it could have been some racially motivated poor treatment from their quote-unquote comrades. And I'm not a fan of loss of life at all, really, of course, but forceful conscripting of people from other nationalities into your own army can certainly achieve some mixed results. And also, just lastly for Belgorod, some breaking news, this one, really fresh in the last couple of hours. So, Ukrainian forces are possibly striking the Belgorod airport now. There have been some explosions and several large plumes of smoke clouds visible around the airport. However, early reports suggest that Ukraine was taking out some radar installations. Then we'll move across on the map to the Ukrainian side. Oh, in fact, we're already here, so Sumy, right next to Belgorod. It's actually getting pretty hard hit today with a combination of Russian missiles and particularly artillery. 100 plus strikes in total, mostly artillery. No casualties, thankfully, there so far. Then we move across to Kharkiv, where it's mostly a mop-up crew situation in the oblast at the moment, where the Ukrainian armed forces have found some captured/abandoned Russian goods, such as the Russian R-149 MA-1 command and staff vehicle, a beautifully rare find, and recently caught as well 2 T-73 tanks. Always fantastic to see. Then we'll move across a little bit closer to the Donbass, where we mostly are anyway. So the Donbass, again, comprises of 2 oblasts, so the Luhansk on the north and the Donetsk on the south there. Now, the date map itself has said to show us some minor clarifications only on the map so far. However, we do know that there was a repelled a counterattack attempt from the Russian forces from their Kremina location where they've dug their heels into. So they're staying there again today. But also in the Donbass, sort of, something I've just realized today in this region, or more so realized I'm not seeing, which is more so of an absence of Russian attacks on Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. So previously, before the successful Ukrainian counteroffensive in the north, indicated by the blues and greens there, these two cities were getting hammered daily from Russian forces from the north, from the Russian, when they were staged in the north region here. Because not only did Russia have a good location to do so, to launch their short-range artillery strikes, but they also had a combination of access to roads, highway roads, and rail cargo routes north all the way up to the Russian oblast of Belgorod. Needless to say, Russia has lost access to a lot of these supply and logistics infrastructure lines in the last 4 to 6 weeks or so, allowing a bit of reprieve for these cities. In fact, these are the biggest two cities left over in the Donbass that Russia hasn't taken, has never taken, and truly now may never ever take. Then we'll move across to, again, Nikopol. So unfortunately, never a quiet day in Ukrainian Nikopol, always getting shelled from Russian forces across the river at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Enerhoda. Russian forces, of course, using it as a bit of a shield to fling their indiscriminate shells over the river to Nikopol. Bit of a dick move. Now, Russia would themselves set up some shielding from every available Ukrainian nuclear power plant if they had the chance. In fact, there was another nuclear power plant Russia forces used as a bit of a shield. Anyone remember that one? The Chernobyl nuclear power plant up the north, a little bit north of Kiev there, right there near the border, where it was more important for the Russian forces to control the plant and use it as a potential shield as well, rather than concerning themselves with the cesium-137 radiation exposure sites. Sites of which are said to be radioactive for the next 20,000 years. I kid you not. Now, of course, the Russians have since withdrawn from being stationed here for about a month. They left at the end of March when they did that big pullback and withdrawal. But the disruption of the contaminated soil by the Russian forces reportedly led to a 20-fold increase of radiation levels here. Now, the Chernobyl operator, Energodom, claimed that for the nuclear power plant, they also, in fact, are the operator for the Zaporizhzhia one. They claimed that the Russian troops had dug trenches in the most contaminated parts of the Chernobyl exclusion zone early on, receiving significant doses of radiation. Now, I'm really obviously getting off script here, so to speak, but I just have to say, whichever Russian commander thought it was a good idea to try to take control of the Chernobyl plant was not only inept or incompetent at their job, but should also be taken up on charges of at least some sort of involuntary manslaughter. Because there's probably a lot of sick Russians out there right now, and we may never hear their stories. Then we move across down to Kherson, where it's all happening, but I can't really tell you about it. A, because they're not really letting the information out, and they don't want anybody to talk about it either. So Kherson, the front line, is a tricky topic right now. And as I speak, so there's the counter-offensive taking place. In fact, the armed forces of Ukraine are requesting that everybody go dark on posting any information, videos, photos with regards to Kherson. Something we do know, however, is that there are explosions in Novokhovka right near the dam. So this is Russian occupied territory, of course. At least 10 explosions. Now we're waiting for visuals, but this may suggest that Ukraine may have created a new front line or staging ground near, say, Mylov or Milave. I prefer to say Mylov. My apologies. So staging around here, allowing their other medium-range artillery systems to now be within proximity of some key Russian occupied military locations, like just having a look at the map here. So let's say Berislav, that's obviously one there. See, 27, about 28 kilometers, or that would be about 18 miles, or certainly where all the explosions are, Novikovka, 40 kilometers or about 25 miles. So if the Ukrainian forces are indeed at the Mylov location right now, this opens them up to a whole wide range of additional weaponry opportunities in their arsenal now to use. Now, just off the top of my head, that would include the giant Sint B and S platforms, the Mr. B and Mr. S howitzers, all of those of which have a 25-mile or 40-kilometer range. The M777 howitzers as well, also the same type of range there too. Also the Excalibur missiles that are very, very high precision shells that can reach these locations very easily now too. And a whole bunch of other weapons platforms as well that the Ukrainians have. I'm excluding, of course, the M270s and the HIMARSs, those sorts of things, which, of course, were already within range of further distances because they go out to about 55 miles and about 85 kilometers or so. But the problem there with the HIMARS really is that it's more rare in ammo numbers, not to mention more expensive too. But basically, even Kremlin war journalists, so Moscow war journalists, are briefly reporting on a seriously Ukrainian launched offensive as well at this rough location. Then we'll have a look at some of the loot, or the spoils of war, so to speak, the captures or donations. So wouldn't be another Kherson day without another T-62 capture. This is the T-62M variant in the Kherson Oblast. And note the colors of the flag, same as the colors of the Ukrainian flag. These are actually Crimean Tatar defenders, a Turkic ethnic group and nation who are an indigenous people of Crimea, and of course supporters of the Ukrainian side as well. Then we'll move across not too far to Mykolaiv, the city, where the Ukrainian forces recovered a Russian Shahed 136 drone, one of the Iranian-provided, mostly substandard drones, shot down over the Black Sea near Kobliv, in the Mykolaiv Oblast, in fact. Then we'll quickly move across to some news for today, guys. So, starting off, Germany has handed over 16 Biber bridge layer tanks to Ukraine. So the tanks will enable Ukrainian troops to cross waters or obstacles in combat. And I mean, look at these absolute behemoths. I'm quite fond of these because it expands on Ukraine's already existing capability to cross land obstacles such as rivers and waterways. Conversely, it's something Russia have not shown to be capable of overcoming typically. And then some news regarding Odessa, or the grain shipments. So 7 more grain cargo ships have recently left the port of Odessa, and in total 341 grain ships carrying nearly 10 million metric tons of Ukrainian grain have left Ukraine ports since Kyiv and Moscow signed that UN-backed grain deal back in July the 22nd, I believe, from memory. So that was only a few months ago, really. Although this ongoing deal of grain allowance passage through the Black Sea, which is heavily contested because of Russian ships here, has been under threat by Putin, warning he may stop the deal, particularly, and I speculate, as his war is not going the way that he had initially hoped for. And in some more news, China calls all of their citizens, to leave Ukraine immediately amidst the Russian-Belarus military training and build-up threat just north of the Ukrainian border in Belarus there. Some speculate this Chinese citizen request to leave Ukraine ASAP may signify a joint Russian and Belarusian offensive in the north soon. But me, I'm a little bit more skeptical, or better for me to say, if it does happen, it's likely to be a failure, potentially a spectacular failure. The Ukrainian armed forces have fortified positions along this area now, probably just like they did at the beginning of the war, probably rigged up bridges and roads and pass through areas with explosives just in case they try to come through to the capital of Kiev, for instance. Obviously, that would be one of their major objectives. They really would love to take the capital of Kiev. One last attempt. Oh, and not to mention there's a lot of Ukrainian forces already stationed here. In fact, a lot of them are doing drills there, so they're taking their time to become quite efficient at what they do. And in some other news, another day, another mobilization embarrassment for Russia. So this footage is from Moscow City, the very heart of Russia, really, from this very month in October. Now, the Russian title at the beginning said, "And in our yard, they are handing out the agenda," which is what the mobilization is sometimes referred to as over there. Now, I've seen enough footage of botched Russian mobilization efforts, so to speak candidly or bluntly, I would say that these Russian citizens are being treated like criminals in Russia due to their mobilization. So once the Russian mobilization police find someone to mobilize, with very relaxed draft-in parameters, might I add, then they will handcuff the citizens if required, or in the least place them in a lockdown living quarters without allowing the citizens to tie up any loose ends with any of their affairs back home that they may have. And then Russia just effectively ships them out to the front lines of the war within as little as 48 hours. It's pretty sad, actually. All in the name of some Russian commanders filling their frontline quotas temporarily. My highest hope is that, of course, that the Russian population will eventually tire of this and stop putting up with it. And I guess change, real true change for any country, only comes from the inside. Where, say, the overwhelming majority of the population stands up in solidarity against the political figures, the leaders. And then just some funnies to round it all off with. So, Finnish people are fantastic. You can see here, two Finnish guys, quote-unquote, annexed a Russian diplomat's parking spot by painting it with the Ukrainian flag. But that's not all. In the Polish capital of Warsaw, a quote-unquote referendum was held on the transfer of the Russian embassy there to the ownership of the city. I love these things when they happen. And for a quick final funny, it's probably more important really in terms of its ramifications. But if you saw yesterday's video of mine, you might have noticed that Russia was forced to pull out some ancient equipment out of storage. A whole bunch of old 1950s anti-aircraft guns, the APZ S-60s. Well, as Russia pulls out the 72-year-old guns, Ukraine conversely continues to receive in more and more modern NATO weaponry, such as this beautifully provided German self-propelled anti-aircraft gun, also known as a Sparg. This one's in Ukrainian service now as we speak, and most likely in the Kharkiv Oblast. And over time, I guess over a period of time, what we'll have between Ukraine and Russia is something called technological disparity or asymmetrical warfare, where one party is generations more technologically advanced than the other. This is definitely the direction things are going. But this is probably the reason why Russian President Putin more and more seems like he's open for negotiations. And more Ukraine, Zelensky are not open to negotiations whatsoever. Okay guys, so thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Ignore all those trolls in the comments, as I like to say these days. They love trying to insert misinformation into the comments, sometimes in the form of a question. But once you see it a lot, you get used to it and you start to ignore it a bit more. But I like to hear from you guys. You can see I'm usually in the comments when I get a chance. And yeah, I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.